This is the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, brought to you by Cisco. Cisco is here to help set you up for success by delivering high-quality foods, products, and services for your restaurant. Recording live to digital from the NCF&B studios in downtown Raleigh. Join us as we lead you into the kitchen, inside the bottle, and into the minds of the food and beverage industry. And now, waiting for you to stop so they can start talking, it's Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss, and we are getting all brewed up today.
That's right.
With a little sugar, spice, everything nice, including the owners and proprietors of Cocoa Cinnamon. We have Areli, Barrera, Grodski, and Leon Grodski, Barrera. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice job, Matt, on that pronunciation.
I might not be able to do like the Indian dialect so well, you know, but Spanish is in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing that you're not doing other people's accents or like trying to sound like them. That might be cultural appropriation, Matt.
Is that right? What about all the people who do voices and stuff like that? Yeah. And,
well, I know this is totally off topic, but are you aware of Michelle Williams in the Britney Spears biography? Michelle Williams, notable Academy Award-winning actress, is doing the
former
voice.
spouse of Heath Ledger.
Correct.
Michelle Williams.
Yeah.
Yes.
And many would say always still married to Heath Ledger, you know?
Oh, you're so sappy, Max.
But she does all the voices, and she's an amazing actress and can do voices. And apparently there's something quite comical about her doing JT, Justin Timberlake's urban voice, the way that Britney wrote him to say, like, he sounds, let's just say he tries to speak like he's not from like his whitewashed suburbanite town.
Okay.
So it's just kind of funny to listen to Michelle Williams speak like Justin Timberlake, trying to sound all urban. So anyhow,
Is there a lawsuit here, or is it just like a funny anecdote?
No, it's just funny. They're like that.
Okay.
Everybody's like making fun of the fact that she is making him sound like a total douchebag.
Okay. What about the impersonators, like the famous, like the Rich Littles of the world?
Canceled.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, Frank Caliendo.
Frank
Canceled.
Caliendo, that guy.
Bill Hader. Canceled. All of them. You can't speak.
I can't live in a world like that.
Yeah, Matt, that almost sounded a little Jewish.
Did it?
Oh yeah, but
It's
you
that
are.
little Albert Brooks there.
Yeah.
Like, I can't live in a world like this.
Okay, we could go on a tangent for too long. I did just watch Defending Your Life this weekend with the girls. It was a great movie, Albert Brooks movie.
Yeah. I watched. Sorry, we're getting off the topic here, but I have to, because this is so ridiculous. Because it was a really bad, depressing movie, I'll say. But Old Dads. And I know you're a fan of
With Bill Burr.
Yeah,
Not that great.
no, it really wasn't. But there was a really one standout moment where he said, and this is kind of inspiring me, where he's like, "I just got told that to stop smoking by a guy who was smoking. I can't live in a world like this."
Yeah. And that actor, I forget his name right now. It escapes me, but he's in Blackbird and he's in Cobra Kai and he's everywhere.
yeah,
But
Cobra
he's
Kai,
so good.
so
He's he was the whatever, it doesn't matter. You keep going on about nonsense. Let's talk about coffee, folks.
Yeah.
How dare we just completely go off the rails? This show is about food and beverage in North Carolina, and we have amazing coffee makers. There's also Little Waves Coffee, which Little Waves Coffee Roasting Company is your company that kind of fuels the engine for Cocoa Cinnamon. Is that a fair way to segue?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. How are you?
Hello.
You can talk now.
Is this my
Or
cue?
you can just talk about movies and your impressions of that. Also, that's just as relevant.
That's
Yeah.
great.
But
Did you watch anything cool over the weekend?
Oh, over the weekend.
Oh gosh,
We just
we
binge
shouldn't
watch
admit it.
shows. Yeah. I
admit
think-
it.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I admit
We all have our
I
guilty
watch
pleasures.
Trash TV.
That's
That's
okay.
my
But-
pacifier.
Okay, but that's vague. Like, what makes it trash?
So
Most reality shows.
Okay.
Right?
We're kicking the can down the street.
Oh,
Let's
Max
get a
has
real name.
Max has a real good recommendation for you on reality TV in a
Ooh,
second.
okay,
after you
here.
reveal
I
yours.
love watching like all the really bad like love shows. So like Love Is Blind.
Are you watching The Golden
Married-
Bachelor right now?
Oh no, I don't. What is that on? I don't think I have that.
ABC, but
Okay.
Yeah. What about Naked Attraction?
yeah.
No.
Come on.
Is that your recommendation?
Leon, look, he took a sip of coffee, so he didn't have to say anything.
I haven't
He's like,
seen it.
what?
We're like we're old school. Well, I don't know. She's not. We have two different zones, but she. So during the beginning of the pandemic, like everybody went through whatever we were going through, and Areli started with the reality shows, and I would just sit on the bed like, oh, what's this crap?
Yeah.
And then
you got
knock it
hooked?
off the bed.
And then the drama hooks you in.
Yeah, so this is like really old school, but we watched the beginning. We started with episode 1 of Survivor and watched all 44 seasons during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, that's kind of naked attraction.
From start to end. So now
That's kind of naked
season
attraction, though.
Is it?
Because Richard,
right.
spoiler alert for a show that came out 25 years ago, but the guy that won was naked the whole time.
Right.
Right? Do you guys remember that?
That guy
Yeah.
was also canceled.
He
I
was.
do remember that.
Yeah.
It was only
What,
2
did you
years ago.
impersonate somebody?
Yeah.
Your improper impersonation?
Yeah. So, well, the best part about this is we're just having a ridiculous conversation, but this is like what you do when you sit at a coffee shop and you meet with some
Coffee talk.
friends.
Yeah,
It's
I was
coffee
just
talk.
about to say, like, it's all connected.
Yeah. You just, what is it? What is it called? A coffee clatch?
Coffee clatch?
Yeah. Isn't that the term?
It is.
What is a coffee clatch?
I actually can't define it very well, but I think it's exactly what you're saying, which is kind of sitting there and BSing. But
It's a group of people that
Yeah.
meet,
Right.
weekly, like a book club or so.
Yeah.
But
right.
it's
Okay,
they
so
meet
you
in
got
a
it better than me.
Clatch. It's a good word. Yeah.
It could. It was. Is it a Yiddish word or
No, that doesn't sound like a Yiddish
really
word. but
Klatsch? I don't know. It's either
sounds like a
Yiddish
CL,
or
but
German.
Yeah. Maybe if it's a K. Yeah. We'll have
think
a
I
break
actually
for
don't
that.
know. I feel like I should know that.
I feel
now
like
that it
you
came
should,
up.
being, you're...
Yeah.
I mean, there's a coffee company called Klatsch.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's with a K.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Klatsch.
Good call, Leon Grodski. You might be right about that one.
It's a German word,
Is it
actually.
German?
Yeah.
Well, German and Yiddish overlap, and
Yeah.
that could be touchy, but
Yeah, it's growing up, my mama, my grandma used the term coffee clatch. When my girls were young, I used to coffee clatch with other moms in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, or meeting my friends for dinner over a coffee clatch.
Yeah, we just call it chisme time.
yeah, I don't think it's
What?
Chisme
formal
time.
necessarily.
Chisme?
Chisme.
Chisme.
Yeah, spilling the tea, gossiping.
Oh, I thought you were. Wait a minute. Chisme? Is that a different
Chisme.
word? Your language you're speaking?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Spanish.
Like
Spanish
clatch.
word, yeah. Like cheese man.
Yeah, Matt knows.
Yeah.
Right now, people are listening and going, "What is going on right now?"
It's my imposition on our family. So we have half Spanish speakers and half native English speakers. So when we mix them together for taking a picture, we say chisme so that the English speakers smile and the Spanish speakers smile instead of saying cheese.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chisme.
Have a universal word. I like that. It's very
Everybody-
appropriate. Well, here we go. Let's dig into your guys' story, and even before we get into coffee, then right there. So you guys did something that's unique, or I haven't seen it. You took each other's last name, so that you still don't have the same last name, but you have each other's grown-up family of origin name.
Yes.
What was? Tell us about that. How'd that come to be? Did you see somebody else do it, or you just said, "This is what we're going to do"?
Big fans of Tony Villaraigosa.
Yeah, exactly.
It's turned out more poetic than ours, though.
I think for me, it was more a little bit of a nod to my culture, originally from Mexico. And so in Mexico, you have like that's kind of how you do it. So like my mom's name is Ramona Barrera Vizcarra, but like her maiden name is at the end. And so like I grew up with, that being a thing, except usually it's just the woman that takes the man's last name and keeps their maiden name in their full name. So that's why a lot of Latinos have super long names.
Right. That's and that's like an original Spanish thing. Is what they do, right? So
I think it's I think we've seen it in like other countries as well, like European countries. Like
Well, yeah,
Vaughn.
it's not too
Like-
uncommon. If your
Yeah.
last name was Anderson, you were literally the son of Anders.
Right.
Right.
And if you were my old roommate Yana Faisarova, ova, which is like the feminine word for like your ova, like ovaries and all, was if you were the female, her father's last name was Faiser, like Fisher, and she was the female, so it was Faisarova. So women had the ova part of their name. Every culture does that, except for us. We're just like, your last name's Smith? Cool. Your last name's Smith now because you married that Smith, and we're done.
Yeah.
I felt like it was just honest. It just felt how it was I got really lucky, and we just like combined.
Yeah.
But now do people look at you, Leon Grodski, and you're like, you're a Barrera?
The bank gets confused. They're like,
Yeah, no,
like
the
a
bank
new
got
person at
confused
the
with me,
bank.
too.
It's like,
Yeah.
are you sure you did your last name? too?
¿Hablas
Like, we're-
español?
No,
Well-
Leon just confuses everyone.
I feel like you
Like-
like that role, Leon.
He does.
I just like to look at the complexity. That's all.
Right.
I got really lucky. I was 36 years old, and I just remember I was in a horrible relationship. I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I was in a really like.
What was
aw-
her first and last name?
And social
No.
security number.
It was awful enough that, number one, you all can already tell I got very lucky in life, and so to be even more aware of that, going from contrasting from something that was very difficult into like winning the lottery of life here. It happened very quickly. We fell in love very quickly. It's April 18th, got engaged in May, and got married June 14th.
Oh, wow.
Very
it was
quickly.
a 2 months courtship, huh?
Well, we knew each other for 6 years before that, but it was very unexpected.
By way of the coffee business, or
By way of living in a small town near each other,
which was?
in and around Cherokee in North Carolina.
Oh, okay. How did
We
you
came
guys
here.
get
We
to
came here
Cherokee?
saying we weren't going to talk about this. It's so funny. It always goes
you
back to
did
that.
it.
I didn't do it. They did it.
We brought it out of you.
Well, it's just like we always end up going to our beginnings, and we have so many cool things that we're focused on now
We'll
that
get
it's
there.
like we don't want to.
We'll get there. We
Well-
can make it a two-parter. Who cares?
All right.
How'd you get to Cherokee, North Carolina? I mean,
We have two different ways, obviously.
Yeah, and just so you say, like that's very apropos to our show because Max is from Los Angeles, I'm from New York, and it's like, how the heck did we meet up in North Carolina and start a show
Yeah.
about the North Carolina culinary world? So
Yeah.
Well, she's from Tijuana, and I'm from New York, so.
Yeah, so similar stories.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
West
right.
Coast,
West
East
Coast,
Coast,
East
yeah.
Coast. Nice.
yeah, and so how did you get to Cherokee, North Carolina?
So in the late 90s, early 2000s, I worked as an artist and multimedia producer in New York City. And an artist named David Solo from Durham came up, and I produced a photoreal animation for a art installation he was doing that first showed at the old version of CAM in 2001, I think.
CAM is the Contemporary Arts Museum, not my
Yeah.
son, but
There's a really wonderful picture of me sleeping on the bottom step because we just worked so hard. And in any case, Dave and I got very close and had similar artistic interests and just kind of dove in and became lifelong friends. And so I would come periodically down to Durham to work on his projects, and then later on, through that experience, was a resident artist at Western Carolina University. And
okay.
you just have no idea what's going to happen next in your life. I ended up living out there, opening up a coffee shop and an art center with a member of the tribe, and it was an amazing experience. And
You're saying a member of the Cherokee tribe, not
Yeah.
when you say that to
no,
a
a
Jewish
member
man,
of
you're
the Eastern
like,
Band
I
of
say,
Cherokee.
okay.
Yeah. And living in an incredible community and living on the side of a mountain. I went from Williamsburg, Brooklyn to, a mountainside between Bryson and Cherokee.
Super cool. Wow.
And then I think before I even moved there, I met Areli on the street because she was working with in her sister's shop, and I was looking at locations and, what do you do?
For your coffee shop.
Yeah, just be like, hi, and that's how we first met.
Well, Areli, I got to ask you, because being a California native and spending most of my adult life in Los Angeles, I've been to Tijuana a few times. I've never met anyone from Tijuana that wasn't in Tijuana. You know what I mean? Like people
they don't
don't
get out?
travel well from Tijuana. Like, I mean, they might come up to Los Angeles, but like,
Right.
sure as heck not North Carolina. So, like, tell me your journey just from Tijuana to here.
Yeah. I was 6 years old when we moved to.
Oh, okay.
Well, we moved to San Antonio first.
Yeah.
So
That's where Max got engaged.
Yeah. Proposed
Hey.
on the Riverwalk.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we moved to San Antonio because my dad had siblings there. So my dad is one of 10. And he and my mom met in Tijuana, but they're both from like the Midwestern coast, I guess.
Yeah.
Nayarit,
Nayarit.
and
Oh, yeah.
Sinaloa.
Oh, those are beautiful
Yeah.
areas, actually.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my dad is from Nayarit and my mom is from Sinaloa, and they met in Tijuana and they got married there. And me and my siblings, I'm one of 4, we're all born there, and I'm the youngest by a lot.
Uh-oh.
I'm
Accident,
like,
baby.
hey, that's what I say, and they're like, no, we planned
Miracle
you.
baby. you say.
Yeah. So how old were you when you made it to North Carolina?
I was 10.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you've lived here. This is your, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is your hometown, or like this is where you grew up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we moved to Cherokee. Like we moved to Cherokee in 1995, and then we in Cherokee you can't own land or you can't own a home unless you're Cherokee.
Unless
so
you're- yeah.
we kind of moved into like. So my dad is an entrepreneur, and his like line of business was like traveling to the U.S. and to Canada, and doing like ferias, so like festivals that usually are like at fairgrounds,
Oh, okay.
where he would sell like Mexican textiles and leather goods and falsa blankets and stuff like that. And so he would do like wholesale business with that, and then he learned how to like. Somebody like sold him one of their shops in Tijuana, and then he kind of learned that business and then hooked his like siblings up with
Yeah.
that style of business in the U.S. And so my tia, his oldest sister, was living in San Antonio, and he helped her like open up a shop in like the old historic mercado, the market that's like in downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they still have that location, but that's kind of how we moved to the U.S. My tia had gotten papers in, and through her we were able to get like a visa to come to the U.S. And so yeah, it's just been my dad's like journey of finding locations to open up shops is
Yeah.
kind of what led us to Cherokee. He had a brother that was living in Sevierville at the time, and he had a shop there, and so he would like travel there often to like bring him.
So there
Textiles.
wasn't like a Native American connection, like with your family specifically. Just because, obviously, I mean, like I have a very significant amount of Native American blood in me because of my brother-in-law. The Mexican blood we have is more from Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's like many just consider it more like Native, just because it was Mexico before it became the U.S. So it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of both.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole area is protected. Speaking of movies, that just if you have 3.5 hours to kill, you go see Killers of the Flower
we did
Moon.
see that.
You saw it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant story. It's intense. DiCaprio and
De Niro.
De Niro and what's his name? The director.
Martin
Scorsese. Yeah, I couldn't think of his name for a second.
What's that guy's name?
Yeah, that dude that does the
guy.
commercials
Hey.
with Timothée Chalamet. Yeah, that's how we know him. But yeah, go check it out if you have time to kill people. A lot of time to kill in these holiday moments. Go see it. It's a good story. But okay, so then you two. Let's fast forward a little bit because we're drinking some delicious coffee
Definitely.
that you guys have poured us right now. But you two meet each other. And he's already running a coffee shop. So I can kind of see that there was some entrance into the coffee world there. Where was your mind with coffee at this point?
So our like I think deepening of our friendship and everything kind of started in 2009, because I had just moved back from UNC, from Chapel Hill, and I had just graduated undergrad, and I was like, I honestly just went to school for like the sake of learning and not just for a career or anything like that. But I did major in Spanish. So I was like, worst case scenario, I'll just become a Spanish teacher.
Sure.
My Spanish teacher actually at community college was the one who inspired me to go to UNC. She said they had a really great Spanish program. But I just like took advantage of like just trying to learn whatever I could and absorb everything that I could. And yeah, I moved back to Cherokee in 2009, and I started working at the coffee shop that Leon and his partner had at the time. And I was already kind of interested in the idea of working at a coffee shop, but it wasn't until like actually visiting that one that it kind of clicked as to why I was being drawn to that. And it was more just about growing up in Cherokee and growing up in that community, never really having a space like that. Kind of just showed me the value of what it looks like to have and create space around. Like coffee is like just a vehicle, for creating these spaces. And it was so beautiful to see because it was like multi-generational like customers, and I feel like all the artists in Cherokee like finally found a spot, you know, to like see themselves and just hang out and have possibilities of showing their work. And I don't know, I think just feeling and being creative. And yeah, that just didn't exist before.
Not in that specific way. Of course it exists, but
Yeah.
like in a way that was not only traditional. It was also like, what does this mean in
A specific, yeah, I would say it didn't exist before in a specific way where it was more open and not
Like
so like,
nurtured and like
and a
brought
little,
to- yeah.
a little more contemporary.
yeah.
There are artists who, you know, some incredible folks who do wood carvings, and it's more of keeping a tradition alive. And some of those artists would show, but also, you know, contemporary interpretations of what it means to be Cherokee or what it means to be Native or not. You know, it could be just contemporary work by an indigenous artist. There's an incredible artist who recently showed in the Asheville Art Museum, Luzine Hill, who was in our first exhibition, and she shows all over the world. And the work does have to do, a lot of it plays into what it is, into indigenous questions, but is she a Cherokee artist who's doing contemporary work or contemporary artist who's Cherokee? And I think the space allowed not simply preservation, but a preservation by reasserting what it is. So preservation through creation.
Yeah. You know, it's timely. We are in Native American Appreciation Month or Heritage Month, which I always laugh at those months. It's like, so then when the month's over, we don't have to, we're just done with this now. It's like, we should just, but I guess it's good to put it in front of everybody to be like, hey, spend some time to learn your history and other cultures around. And you can see like, I have a concept that I'm working on that's very deeply tied to Native American culture that may come to fruition at some point in life, but it's something I hold very dear to my heart as well.
Yeah.
All right, so real quick, just because the coffee's getting cold, tell us what we're drinking.
So right now you're drinking a coffee from Kenya. It's actually not in our roastery yet, but it's en route. This coffee is, I think, a good example of like our sourcing program. It's taken, I don't know, I think for me, connecting with women in the industry and just finding relationships and nurturing those relationships. This coffee is specifically from a producer in Kenya through Mbula, who is somebody who I came to know, really know through the CCRE, which is the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity. But she's been like importing and exporting Kenyan coffees. She's like one of very few women Q graders, which is kind of like the sommelier of coffee in Kenya. And she also roasts coffee, and she's just a badass. And I saw her at the Coffee Expo in Portland this year. I almost said last year, but it was this year. And I was just like, oh, like, I want to get coffee through you. Like, why haven't I done this before, you know? And some of it is just, we have so many coffees on our menu, but it's like little by little, like starting to make the room and the pathways to only get coffees from people who I have a direct connection with. Because I trust and value like their mission and their like way of approaching like how they're supporting the producers. And so this coffee is a Kenyan washed, and it's a AB, which is like the screen size. And usually ABs tend to be a little bit more savory, but the reason why I really like this one is because it's got more of that like classic Kenyan coffee vibes of like a little bit of blackcurrant, some grapefruit.
Yeah, I was going to say, this doesn't hit me over the head with a ton of like bright ripe fruit. In fact, it's pretty subtle, but it has like an earthy component to it.
Yeah.
Like far more than what I would typically drink.
Yeah.
But it's really cool.
So, talking about this and your connection to it, how did you actually take the coffee shop in Cherokee and now turn it into Little Waves and Cocoa Cinnamon?
with the business plan, baby.
Yeah.
Really, I feel like the business plan was something that was super foreign to me.
Yeah.
And Leon just like was like, we got to write this business plan. I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like homework.
But with an intention of saying we are going to start a coffee company, not just a coffee shop, and move back to Durham area.
Well, we were really like thinking, yes. To fast forward the question,
Yeah.
yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
But we were like, we didn't have any money, so we were like, let's dream big.
Yeah.
So we were like narrowing it down. We kind of ended up between San Diego and Durham.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you were going to move back close to the roots in San Diego.
Yeah.
We were newly married, in love, and totally idealistic without any basis in reality. We were broke. We were like starting from scratch after we got married.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, we just literally, I think we were just so happy in many regards that we were just like, where do we want to be? And we just created like this dream. It's supposed to be a top 10 list, turned into 25. It was like all over the planet. And then Durham and San Diego were becoming more real. And then David, who the artist who originally drew me to Durham, just was like, kind of wrote us like, if you wrote a letter in the 1800s, the mail isn't super quick, so it's like very heartfelt. He wrote us like a couple emails like that. He was like, come.
Yeah.
And we just started visiting, and I had spent months, working with him over the years in Durham, and we visited, and it just kind of started almost like floating. There was a lot of work, but in a way it was like we were floating down a river.
Yeah.
Like our marriage was like that. The Coco Cinnamon idea came about like that, kind of not quite on accident, but it just started. There was like a life of its own kind of thing.
Yeah. Is that, I'm trying to make out your t-shirt between the lo importante es que la cumbia sueñas más fuerte que los problemas. So it's not important, but more the strength of your dreams than the problems.
Is that straight to your dreams are
No,
bigger than your problems or something?
the important thing is for the cumbia to sound like stronger or louder than your problems.
The cumbia.
Being a
Cumbia,
music form.
It's from Meridian Brothers. I came and saw, and they were here at King's. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was really great. They're
So,
from
yeah.
Colombia.
Got it. So yeah, kind of like the strength of the need to get to this coffee was stronger than any problems.
Yeah, I don't think she made the T-shirt, Matt.
But she wore
Right.
it today. Where I think that says something when you wear
I'm
a
with you.
T-shirt
I like it.
that.
I like it.
I think it has
You're
a
right.
message.
I think you're right.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's a focus
The
question.
shirt you wear is how you feel.
That's right.
Oh, show off that shirt,
Yeah.
Matt. I don't see
2
a
weeks in a row.
I don't see a
over-
Jets shirt on
Yeah,
you.
2 weeks in a row, his Raiders beat a New York team, so he's feeling very, very prideful.
I know.
At this time, we talk about coffee, and coffee has to be fresh and it has to be quality.
I
Right,
would
Max?
say so, yeah. And as the industry leader in food service, Cisco has a reputation that is in line with every product they deliver. That's why they ensure the Cisco brand products offer the best quality and freshness every time.
First quality. Cisco products are monitored by dedicated inspectors using industry-leading standards to make sure customers receive the top ingredients available. That means you can count on consistency and, above all, food safety in every product.
And as for freshness, well, Cisco serves up natural, hand-selected produce that's beautiful on the plate and delicious on the palate. Because your menu can only be as good as its ingredients, and you deserve to shop with confidence. When you shop Cisco and shop the best.
Visit Sysco.com. That's SYSCO.com to discover the value of fresh, quality products from Cisco Shop.
Cisco, at the heart of food and service. All right, but let's
I think you should try that coffee.
okay, so
We
you
brought two.
Yeah.
you moved on to new coffee. This is good.
This is a funky blend.
It's a little bit on the funky side.
So the first one you were kind of oversimplifying, at least, to say that
Oh, yeah.
it was more of like a traditional
It's a classic.
blend. Classic.
Kenya is a coffee that you can taste and know that it's Kenya.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're like, all right, Kenya is that. And this was like a classic version that was washed and clean and simple but in a beautiful way to us. This second coffee, we actually, when you first wrote us, we were in Colombia at this farm.
Oh, wow.
So this is Edwin Norena, who is, Just
alchemist.
yeah. Well,
Oh my God.
when we got there, really,
This is like the orange wine of coffee.
yeah. So
Yeah, well, blueberries are popping off the top, I would say, but there's something else that it reminds me of like some Halloween candy, and I can't place it right now. But,
Yeah.
like, there's something like very fall candy like. I don't know if you could help me with these.
let me tell you how
flavors.
this is. So this is a pink Bourbon variety. So to try to simplify for a second, everybody knows like Roma tomatoes and beefsteak tomatoes. Well, those are varieties.
Yeah.
So this is a pink Bourbon variety of coffee that's grown. I think it's about 4,500 feet in the central Colombia, picked by hand, really beautiful cherries. And then Edwin takes it and basically puts it lets it ferment for, I don't know exactly how many hours.
It's usually 72 hours.
72-ish hours, and basically you keep it without oxygen, and it starts breaking down, and it starts fermenting. He has it in these tanks that then, after before the 72 hours is up, he opens the bottom and takes the juices out, the fermented juices, which is called the mosto. It's kind of overlaps with wine, some winemaking.
Totally.
And then has that over here. He then, for this one, took a purple wine yeast and mixed it with some amino acids, some sugar, and basically creates a yeast solution, kind of like you would in baking, and then takes the mosto in his own special recipe, combines them, and then puts it into a no oxygen tank that has the cherries in it. And then basically for another period of time, puts the top on. And he did share with us, like, you can do it without any oxygen, anaerobic. He leaves the initial bit of oxygen in there and lets the ferment push it out. For him, he said it's more complex when you leave the oxygen and let it get pressed out by the anaerobic process. And so then remove the cherries, and then I think it's a red honey, so he's leaving a little bit of mucilage on as it dries, and then we roast it. But it's that whole process that's going into that flavor.
So, but it comes to you as beans.
Yes, it's green, 10 to 11% dried coffee.
Wow.
But that whole process is what's creating the flavor profile.
Yeah.
The terroir or the environmental aspects.
And then
All of that processing, the purple wine yeast, the pink Bourbon variety. And very honestly, you can do that very poorly. Edwin is incredibly talented at it.
yeah, that's in an unbelievable process. I've never heard that before in coffee making.
It sounds like that rosé de Sailly type of like, right, to bleed out the wine or so, like where it just lightly extracts. I don't know if that is the same.
It
as what
sounds
you're
more
doing.
like making grappa though, or brandy, because you're taking the must and then fermenting that.
The interesting thing for us, we just visited two of our farmer partners, Jose Geraldo, that has a 360-hour kombucha ferment that we're going to be getting, and then Edwin that we got. We did 2 tests ourselves where we picked it and processed it with him. So we got those 22-pound tests, and then we'll be getting another new one. This is we're almost out of this one. But he, while we were there doing all of this, shared that he kind of started doing some of this process through a visit to a brewery in Antioquia, and was really blown away by this specific brewery's beer. And he was like, oh, they don't even sell outside of their town. But it was just so amazing that he started playing with some of what he had interacted with them from beer, and then some of it was from wine, and then some of it just old school classic Colombian processing. So he kind of combined the three.
Yeah, excuse my naivety here, but you don't typically ferment coffee beans, right, when you're roasting them, do you?
Not roasting, but
Well,
in the
the
processing.
pre-process, yeah.
The pre-processing you do ferment
Well,
all
there's-
coffees. All coffees should be fermented just because. There's
There's two
always a
levels.
processing. There's always a fermenting process because
It's to loosen the cherry. But it's not necessarily to ferment the coffee.
Yeah,
This level is different.
yeah.
But when I think fermentation, I'm talking about like changing something into alcohol form, or
Right.
or rising bread, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think that it ever gets to the alcoholic.
Okay.
That becomes a fault where the coffee actually
Yeah.
goes bad. So it's the controlling
So it's
of
a
it.
controlled fermentation in order for the mucilage to come off of the cherry or off of the seeds.
Okay.
Or at whatever level they choose to do this, because Edwin usually just chooses either naturals or honeys. which means that he leaves a little bit of the pulp on the seeds to create more like complexity and like, different acidity levels and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the fermentation process does happen in all processing for that reason to like, even if it's a natural process, like some of that fermentation is happening inside of that cherry.
Okay.
And then it's just a matter of like paying close attention to not letting it over ferment so that it doesn't taste like fermented
So
fruit.
when you mentioned 72 hours, I'm just going to assume that that's a lot longer than a typical ferment, probably like slow and low kind of thought process.
Right. Or, exactly. I mean, when you keyed in right in the sense that this can all go very wrong. And it's kind of easier for it to go wrong. And so the people that are doing this, and I think of Jose and Edwin, who are both within an hour of each other, are masters at it.
And so what's the process called? Or I guess let's even simplify more. If I want this coffee and I go into one of the locations, what do I order?
I think in some places it's like they consider it like an anaerobic fermentation process, which is a little bit redundant, I think. But
well, and it's a question of accuracy. Edwin would say that it's low oxygen because he's leaving a little bit of oxygen in the tank before there's no oxygen. So it can get a little technical, but a lot of people would refer to it as anaerobic or low oxygen.
Okay. But is this specific coffee available in your
We're
your
about
shop
to
right
run out of this right now. It's not in the shop. It's online at littlewaves.coffee.
Okay.
You can also see, because the thing is, this, what we're talking about can be kind of intimidating. It's a lot of information. And even as we're talking about it, it can be like, yeah, I hear you, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We actually, while we were on the farm, made little videos that are on our reels on Instagram.
Oh, cool.
Littlewaves.coffee that are really beautiful and simple and make what we're talking about a little bit more approachable.
Okay.
So the cool part is tasting. I mean, like, oh my gosh, what is that? Which then makes you want to know what caused that, and so those videos helped.
yeah, I feel like this processing method is like a way to. One of the things that started to captivate me more about this processing method is like people using it and producers specifically using it as a way to kind of up the quality of a variety, especially as like climate change is happening. And I think also like Edwin is starting to get to the point of like wanting to understand a little bit more of like, how like there's like research done about like fermented foods, like kimchi and all of that, like being good for our gut biome. And so he's like, I feel like coffee would fall into that as well. And so he like wants to go back to school to kind of learn more about like the actual health benefits and of like these types of fermentations in coffee, which I find really fascinating. Like to not, that this isn't just like a trend or like, like I think it makes the coffee like a really fun experience, but it's not an everyday cup for some people, you know? So it's like, I don't know. So it's kind of just trying to think about these perspectives as a buyer, on like what purpose does it serve? And I mean, I think for like super like coffee nerds, like these coffees are really exciting because they bring a lot to the table, like in terms of what you're tasting in the cup.
Well, and what was your process for brewing this cup?
Leon?
So I brewed this right before we left. I almost brought the entire brew setup over, and I was like, that is going to be so chaotic.
Yeah.
So we brewed it right before we left on using a slow pour coffee pour stand with an origami, which is like a really beautiful, simple Japanese kind of pour over device, a Siberist filter, which is like a specific kind of material that lets you get a finer grind size without over extracting the coffee. Ground at a specific grind size on a fellow grinder.
Did you do that at your home or you did
We
that
did
at
it
the
at
shop?
So Areli went in and kind of got your packages together, and then I was like, I need to bring them something. So we were like doing like the whole happy freak out. Like I was gonna bring it, but I'm gonna brew it. So
No,
it
it's
got
super
brewed
cool.
right before we left.
I appreciate that.
By the way, for listeners that listen to our show pretty often, you know that we tout and speak the gospel of Carrboro Coffee Roasters, and typically we'd have Lane on to talk about all this. We love coffee in general. We've always gone deep with coffee, and let it be known, like there's a big world out there for a lot of great coffee out there, and this is just expanding upon that conversation. Still, feel free to go to Carrboro Coffee Roasters.com to get all of your coffee needs. But these two businesses play well in the sand. You guys know Scott pretty well, and there becomes this level of headiness. I mean, this is like in the wine world, right, Matt? I mean, like you get a master sommelier like the good Max, Max Cast, not this one that just blabbers on, but you get like a Max Cast and a High Trans sitting there talking about wine, and both can coexist and both have their own opinions on how they do things, but a lot of them probably narrow down to the same path of like, this is the best possible way to source and ethically source and make sure you're rising up the local farmer and purchasing properly. And we recently went in deep with Scott about that, so for those that want to dive even deeper, go back a couple weeks, probably about 10 weeks ago, to our episode with Scott at his roastery. But this is just a great haven for really good coffee sources out here. You're based in Durham, of course, and he's out there in Carrboro.
Well, I'd love to piggyback off of that. Just to, the coffee industry in our region, and for the great part within specialties, it's a kind of plenty perspective. It's not a zero sum game.
Yeah.
Scott, before we roasted, we bought from Scott. Scott is the kind of person that will save the day. I don't remember exactly when, but maybe in like 2015 on like a holiday at 10 o'clock at night, our espresso machine was down, and then like the next day, Saturday, and you're like, I got to be open. Hey, Scott, you got a machine I can borrow? He literally let me come over at 10 p.m. at night on a Sunday and pick it up. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes camaraderie. Scott's a veteran. He's a judge at the World, Barista Championship or cupping, and if he ever got in a jam, we'd be happy to help him out, and he's helped us out a million times. And I do think each place has its own kind of take, but there's room for all of us, and Scott being a kind of exemplary colleague.
Yeah, because you guys could get coffee from the same ethically sourced, great family farmer and produce something that's somewhat different and has their own unique spin on it.
Yeah.
We could. I don't know if we do, but that is entirely possible.
Oh, yeah.
And
that would be fun, right? I don't know if they do that, but that would be fun to like support a farmer on your own and do the same exact coffee, but just do it differently depending on how you roast it versus him.
And that's
Absolutely.
the beautiful thing about coffee is like, there's so much room for people to do it in their own way. Like there's a home for every coffee, and like the idea of like the way that you roast it, the way that you brew it, the way that you grind it, all of these tiny little factors can change the cup. And so you can have a completely different experience with that same bean.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think that's just like a window into how like, for me, like how coffee is. It's just like, it allows you to like really explore the expansion of life.
So explain to me a little bit about the business side. So Little Waves is the production side, essentially, and then Cocoa Cinnamon is your retailer outlet.
Yes.
And is there 2 locations?
3.
There's 3 locations for
3,
Cocoa
all within 2.5 miles. We have an amazing commute.
So you broke the rule of chain, right? Like you're supposed to be 10 miles away from every location or so. So you just said, F that. I'm not going to do that.
Or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We do it Durham style. Each shop is connected with a neighborhood, and each shop has its own aesthetic, which, that's a whole other podcast where the design of the shops have like every object has a story. And, as a quick version, like we refer to them by their neighborhood initials. So OWD is Old West Durham, OND is Old North Durham, and then Lakewood is LKWD within our way of looking at
The
it.
cool kids.
So it used to be numbers, and then everybody called Lakewood. So we were like, we need to make this uniform.
Yeah.
Anyway, at OWD, the design at first reluctantly came out of the imagined reverse DNA. Areli's imagined reverse DNA was where the aesthetic came from. So it's like partially a Mexican, partially indigenous, partially Andalusian, and then partially how North Africa affected Spain, therefore Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So if you like literally, that could be like a 2-hour thing right there.
Yeah.
Where are your roots in Spain? Do you know where they go back?
No clue.
No, imagined reverse DNA. It was
Yeah.
like, you know, like when we were in Morocco, everybody thought she was Moroccan, you know.
Yeah.
like-
Yeah.
I have Spanish roots. The name Trujillo comes from the Extremadura region,
Okay.
which is like if you were at Madrid and you just went west by about 45 minutes, you're in this cool town. But the castle, El Castillo de Trujillo, was like taken over by so many different like cultures
Yeah.
and then built out as it's done. So you have like these Moorish parts, like North African style architecture, but then the French took it over, and so there's this Gothic architecture.
Yeah.
Then the Spaniards took it back over, and it like happened so many different times. So when you look at it, it's beautiful but also odd looking. You're like, what? There's nothing like this anywhere. So it was just cool to go back and see like the history of it. It's like one of the most like war-torn areas from hundreds of years ago, but
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to
That was
check
kind
it
of
out.
our experience, like when we visited the southern parts of Spain, was just like the overlap of like all the different cultures that like
Yeah.
took over those areas. And
Yeah.
that was pretty fascinating to see. Like,
And we were there looking at that specifically, and that's what played out in that shop.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm Sicilian from here down. This part is Polish.
From the
My
waist
height-
down? Oh.
Yeah, from my height and blockiness is all Sicilian. You know, so that trip we did Andalusia, Morocco, and Sicily, and it was
Yeah.
to explore this kind of amalgam nature of how all the culture and history, and you know, if you look at Sicily, you know, it's like we became friends with one of our guests, Tom Ferraro, who's a professor of Romance languages at Duke, and the way we became friends is I walked in the shop, he was sipping on espresso, and somehow it came up that he was Sicilian. He's like, yeah, purebred mutts.
Exactly.
You know, like you've been taken over by everybody. Like I have my actual DNA, and almost none of it's Italian. It's just the whole Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Like, because the Sicilians were just the most conquered place on earth.
They just, it's like a thoroughfare. It's like everybody kind of came through.
Yeah,
Well,
of course. The Greeks, the Romans, the Phoenicians, you all come up through that
all,
road, right?
all short people.
Yeah.
there is such a deep well about coffee and like going down, kind of learning so much. Do you ever just feel intimidated by coffee? And how do you like hold your center with all of this happening at once? Where do you find your place in this world of coffee?
That's a good question. I
Areli
think
became a Q grader earlier this year, which is kind of the sommelier of coffee.
A Q
so
grader.
did Leon.
Well,
He's
she-
being humble.
It took me 2 tries, though. It took you 1.
Q grader. It's like a certification of just 20 tests that you have to pass, and it's all like sensorial and just being able to detect like defects and differences and like very similar coffees.
Do you taste coffee in the dark?
Kind of
Under
in
a red light.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's fancy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
It was
didn't
really
drink-
intense.
Well,
But it was like an affirmation too of like the work that I do on a daily basis and kind of putting it to the test. I mean, I did like study up on it and like try to come as prepared as possible, but it was kind of like, yeah, I think I didn't know what to expect, honestly, in terms of like whether or not I would pass, but it was just worth like going through the course and taking the test just to see where I landed.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, nice to pass it on the first try. But I
Areli
would.
comes up with these flavor notes. Let me just help answer.
Oh, okay.
That's the coffee you just tried.
This is the coffee Max, you
Yeah,
were
what does
asking.
it say?
This is grape juice, guava, raspberry, and gummy bears in a bright, unique, and juicy cup. Edwin Enrique Norena, pink bourbon.
I totally get that. I thought a little Smarties, like there's a little that Smarties dust thrown in
I
there.
like it.
But that's probably just what is that, lactic acid or so? That's just like
Yeah.
something that just you feel like it tastes that, but it's really just the acid you're tasting.
I mean, yeah, enzymatic acids.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Hey, what does the morning coffee look like at your guys' house? Like, do you just put some Folgers in your cup? No, I'm kidding. But
Oh my
do you
gosh,
guys go
my
through
dad.
the whole rigmarole and do a fancy pour over or drip or yes?
Yeah, Leon Leon's our brewer, our head brewer.
Well, morning, it's more of a, this is funny, it's more of a Saturday, Sunday thing. During the week, we don't make anything at home because you're going to work and you're drinking
gonna have
lots of
coffee.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like you just couldn't. But
well,
on the
and
weekend.
it's also just like nice to check in on the baristas and like see how our coffee's
Quality control.
tasting.
Well, and communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See how our coffee's tasting like as espresso or as batch brew, you know. So it's quality control, but also like the way we get our morning coffee.
So
Well, yeah, because you
on
got to
the
adjust
weekend-
your grind all the time based on the temperature and the humidity in the air, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, at home though, it's what we did for you. In fact, you know, I think if I were to rebrew your Kenyan, I would make the grind a hair coarser to open it up a little bit. It was.
I was
a little
going to tell you that. I didn't want to mention it.
It was a
but-
little dense. And then this one, I don't know. It's interesting because I was brewing with the Sybaris filter, which is one that's different than I originally approached this coffee with. So I would probably play with that a little bit. But again, the Edwin I think was extracted kind of where I wanted. But the Kenya I would probably just open it up like a little bit coarser.
real quick, you're talking about recipe and process, and I wanted to tell you that, you know, it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit more contrived, but mayonnaise, especially Duke's mayonnaise right above yours, in addition to being the flagship mayonnaise, which is Duke's Mayo, is still made according to its female founder's original recipe. Duke's offers light olive oil and flavored mayonnaises, tartar sauce, sandwich relish, and regionally inspired Duke's Southern sauces, dressings, and mustards.
Yeah, Duke's is delicious. You can put mayo in coffee. I've seen people do this.
Oh, that would be a radical flavor combination.
Have you ever tried that?
I haven't, but if you go back to some of the very old Ethiopian recipes, you have butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, which you can find at some Ethiopian restaurants, I think.
Well, that's kind of like that MTC kind of oil. It's supposed to be good for brain activity and all.
Yeah.
And it's really just like adding fat. You were trying to add fat, talking about the acid again. It's neutralizing it. It's like the malolactic fermentation in a very high acidic wine or so. You want to like get creaminess to balance it. That's where I've seen people put mayo in wine or in coffee, which is bizarre. But if you were going to do it, you're going to Duke it.
Yeah.
You're going to do that because for over 100 years, Duke has been adding Southern flavors to make good things better, like coffee and wine and pizza and ice cream. And no, not really, but like sandwiches and like dips and all things like that. For more information on what you can put your mayo in, your Duke's Mayo, go visit dukesmayo.com or follow them on Instagram at Dukes_mayonnaise. And go from there. Duke's is pretty awesome, I will say. Do you ever? Yeah, come on. I don't know.
I'm more of a mayonnaise person than she is. So for me, yes, Areli's not a big creamy person, or at least in terms of
Also,
actual dairy. I am though.
Yeah.
Mexico doesn't really incorporate mayo with too much of their.
They put it on the corn on the cob.
Yeah.
But
Like
you don't
straight
get
corn.
that.
Like the
Yeah.
esquitas.
I don't.
The esquitas, yeah.
Esquites.
Yeah, but that's like butter typically, right? I mean,
No,
It's
mayo.
butter and mayo.
Yeah.
And then cheese. And then
you don't typically see mayo on the in the pantry of a
depends.
Mexican kitchen.
I think it depends where in Mexico you are, because some areas do use mayo.
El
Like-
Duque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Have you ever had a mayo, notes of Duke mayo or mayo in your coffee?
Oh.
No.
Yeah, like if you got like a sour
You know,
note,
we'll have
like
to
the
do a tasting.
lactobacillus. Yeah.
We'll have to do like
Well,
a Duke's
I think
mayo
so.
tasting.
Don't be afraid.
We need your help to settle a debate. Well, I don't know if you can help settle, but maybe we can actually get a sample and then they can help us settle it.
Lobster butter?
Yeah, so when
Oh
we
my
were at
God.
Edwin's, we did like 2 straight days of tasting like, 40 coffees. And on one of them, I got notes of lobster butter, which is a very specific taste.
Sure.
And I don't know if it was just that I grew up near the ocean or if I was just wrong, but they were all like, what are you talking about? And for me, it was probably one of the clearest, the whole question of flavor notes can be, with
Yeah, it's subjective.
Yeah, well, in this case, it wasn't. This was like, I'm drinking lobster butter. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they just, none of,
Oh,
you grew up near the ocean.
Like
I don't
somebody
know.
who-
drawn butter, or you're saying like
No,
butter that's been
no.
passed through lobster.
Yeah.
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 If you
Yeah,
grow
like
up
when-
on the Northeast and you get lobsters and you have your little butter in a plastic dish because
It's an undeniable
yes,
taste.
Yes, agreed.
But that's also part about being like a great Somm or a Cicerone or a Q
Q
grater.
Arabica grater.
grader, is that you have to have a good Rolodex of memory, and like you have to articulate those things really well, because that's the whole point, is you have to be able to interpret what you're receiving and say it in words so that people can relate it, be relatable. So that's why you're supposed to eat everything and try everything. That's why you got to go and put some mayo in your coffee just so that you know what it is. You might be like, this is horrible, I'm never going to do it again. But in another scenario, in another life where you're trying some crazy wine, you'd be like, oh, this is like that time we put mayo in coffee, and that's what this reminds me of.
Yeah. And you never know what's going to stick, Like you never know what flavor combination is going to be the next peanut butter and jelly. Because who thought about putting that together?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Edwin, the aroma, you'll get a little bit of the jelly from peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I get that for sure.
This is crazy. This
is
is
crazy,
not like
yeah.
a normal cup of coffee
Yeah.
at all. I mean, those flavor profiles. I mean, how many times do you hear someone say, "Oh, it sounds like tastes like gummy bears and Smarties or whatever"? I mean, and blueberries and all that. Like, it truly is that, though.
Yeah, and
is
I
cool.
think that's like one of the reasons why I really like his processing methods, is that it's never like the acidity is never like punching you in the face. I feel like it's always really well balanced and super sweet. And I think those are the recipes that he's kind of dialed in for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and
super cool.
And similarly for Jose Giraldo, which we'll be getting a coffee that literally, so it's also a pink bourbon, so it's the same variety, except in this case, and we're getting this in soon. He takes the pink bourbon and puts it in these, I don't know how many. The tanks are they're about up to my shoulders and probably wider than my wingspan if I were to fly.
Sure.
And then in this case, ferments it for 360 hours, except it's not in an anaerobic chamber. In fact, it's open topped, but he pumps oxygen in kind of like you would a fish tank. And there's no, and it just creates this whole other experience. So we have these two. They know each other, but they don't work together, but they live near each other. So we visited both of them, and we're getting in December coffees from both of them, and it'll be part of our holiday offerings.
That's cool. I think, to be honest with you, I've been to Cocoa Cinnamon a handful of times. Like the one right on, is it Foster Street in Durham? I don't know what.
Yeah, Gear and Foster.
Gear and Foster. What? I should know my Durham neighborhoods. Is that West Durham?
North.
Is that North
That
Durham?
one corner,
North.
if you look at Durham City maps, you could call that corner like 100 different things. You
Okay.
could call it Central Park, you could call it downtown, you can call it, but it's also, that corner gets wrapped into Old North Durham as well.
Old North Durham.
So
Okay.
because each of ours is neighborhood, we named it after the
Old North.
neighborhood.
That's
Old
the
North.
first one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Across from King Sandwich
But
Shop.
if you walk in there, the average consumer who's looking for a cup of coffee, you would never know the intricacies and the amount of time and effort that has gone into brewing that cup of coffee. Would you? Maybe I just didn't, because I had like my head down. I'm like, I need caffeine.
I think that there's an opportunity to know that,
Yeah.
but we're not trying to like hit you over the head with it.
Yeah.
Our program, our customer service program, is that we invite people and we kind of match their energy. And if we leave the space for them to ask questions, and our menu and like the signature beverage like names are kind of nods. Like we do a lot of research. We do a lot of like nods to historical events and just things that are important to humanity.
Yeah.
But exploring through the history of coffee, chocolate, tea, and spice.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
we
those
try to
themes come out
match
of
like
that.
the ingredients that go into that beverage based off of like the history and the story. So everything's like very intentional and very interconnected. And so we try to title them. Sometimes the Wonder Menu is like a novel of a title. But we try to leave it so that like if somebody wants to know more, they can ask the barista or the person at the register.
Gotcha. And they would know. Okay.
Yeah.
So leave us with something here. where's the first recorded history of a coffee being brewed or enjoyed?
Oh, that's controversial, right?
There's a multiple answer. Well, I guess if you look, so basically, I'm taking so I turned 50 this year. I decided to go back to school. So I'm taking a Zurich University Coffee Excellence Center Certificate in Advanced Studies. So
Of course you are.
we're looking at this. Arabica coffee
Yeah.
is a descendant of Coniferous, which most people would call Robusta, and Eugeneoides. So those two, somewhere between 15 and 60,000 years ago, intermated in what's now the southwest highlands of Ethiopia and then just over in South Sudan. And so that's been growing there for tens of thousands of years. The question of when somebody first drank it, first wrote it down, etc., it's not controversial. There's kind of multiple answers.
So like at the same time, these tens of thousands of years ago, somebody or many people had the idea of like, oh, this looks like a bean that I could process and then make a beverage out of it.
Part of the question is like
also you have to
written
heat the
records
water,
versus
like-
non-written records. Yeah, so there, somewhere around the 400s or 500s, there's kind of a mark that became a beverage. The substantial writing about it started happening in like the 1500s in Yemen, because that's where it really took off as a beverage. And then, the kind of expansion of the drinking of coffee was brought about so you have Yemen, which is at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula, and then you have, the advent of Islam in the 700s and people coming to and from Mecca. You look at the Islamic world after that expands from like southern Spain all the way out past Afghanistan. Well, people at once in their life are coming to and from Mecca. What do you do when you're traveling? You drink some coffee, you're like, oh, I need some of that
Yeah.
at home. So the drink, not the bean, starts spreading. And so it gets documented very heavily starting in the 1400s. And then as a bean spreads originally from Yemen to India by a Muslim pilgrim who smuggled it out. And then the Dutch got their hands on it, planted Java, and then it just kind of became worldwide. So the writings, there's a lot of writings in and around the 1500s.
So we could say comfortably that the modern history of coffee begins in Yemen in the 1400s, the 15th century.
Like almost like 1499, 1500 is kind of like boom.
I'm comfortable with that answer.
We could stop arguing about it, Matt. Yeah, you and I back and forth every day.
Except we want to, I've gotten in a little trouble for saying, not for saying that, but, because it's from southwestern Ethiopia and that's like the place where the most heirloom varieties and land races of Arabica grow wild, that is also so important for us to be aware of, but also the future, like every Arabica species is endangered right now.
Okay.
So that specific forest around the Rift Valley is kind of the hope for the future of Arabica coffee. So it's important to kind of go back to it.
That's awesome. Cocoa cinnamon. No thought to call it Cocoa Ikinea?
We do have a sign on on two of our locations. It's
In both
Cacao
languages.
Canela.
Okay, yeah, because that feels like a sense of place too, to like quickly give a nod to like these flavors might come from this area, sort of like Central South America. I guess was that the
Cacao
feel?
for sure.
Yeah,
Canela is
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Yeah.
yeah. We were trying to think. Were there any spices that we were talking to Marwan Irani about spices with his
Spicewalla.
company, and I was like, are there any like indigenous spices to the U.S.? And it looks
No.
like you've got one.
No, not to the U.S., but to the Americas, allspice.
Allspice.
And vanilla.
I thought
Ooh.
vanilla is like Tahitian and
That's another one.
It
There's
could be
definitely
a different variety.
Yeah. Allspice was there's also chili peppers. It's a
that's
question of
what
what
I
you
thought
consider.
he said. Didn't he say chili
Chilies.
pepper?
Yeah.
chili.
I mean,
but
that's
that's because
kind-
you could take anything and
is that
dry
a
it out.
spice,
That's not
you
a
know?
spice.
Yeah, allspice is from the Americas.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. I feel better now. Well, thank you all for coming on in. What's your Instagram handle?
At littlewaves.coffee.
And at Cocoa Cinnamon.
Okay, cool. You got a dot in your Instagram handle?
Yeah.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
All right.
Evolved thinking over here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming in and sharing your story, even
Thanks for
taking it
having
back
us.
to the origins at Cherokee, North Carolina. And for all of you out there, check out littlewavescoffee.com and go to one of the 3 locations for Cocoa Cinnamon, and you will drink extremely merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.